This is the Functional Rehab Podcast with your host, Dr. Ashley Mack. As of this episode, I am at home taking care of my 9-day-old daughter and wife. Now, my wife has been dealing with some neck pain and shoulder pain during the breastfeeding experience, and it's only been 9 days. The questions that come to my mind are, does this last forever, or does it just get better over time, or does she need to do something different about how she's breastfeeding? So as a physical therapist, I had to get down and understand what was causing the pain, and from there develop a truly easy to follow action plan for my wife to follow. And when I say easy, I literally say easy, as I'm taking just a few moments away from them to record this episode. After implementing these stretches and strategies to my wife's routine, she actually experienced a complete resolution of her pain, even after doing the exercises one time around. So I thought I'd share it with you. So if you're dealing with hand, wrist, elbow, shoulder, neck, or upper back pain, especially with breastfeeding, this episode is for you. And so I am making this episode because of the fact that too many mothers are actually suffering with pain and are going to doctor after doctor, going appointments after appointments, telling them that the pain that they're actually feeling is due to arthritis in a specific joint. They're given countless stretches or exercises that don't really help, and it really takes away from the experience of providing their baby the proper nourishment needed for care and growth. And as a result, they might have to quit breastfeeding and switch over to formula because the mothers simply just can't stand the pain. And when dealing with pain like this, especially with breastfeeding, we have three options. Option number one is just deal with it, kind of grit your teeth and go through the pain, which is a very common journey or common path. The other option is to just simply quit breastfeeding and just transition to formula. Or the third option is actually going and finding a solution so that pain relief is possible and that we can get back into actually experiencing that breastfeeding, what breastfeeding actually does for mother and baby. Before I continue, I do have to say, regardless of being breastfed or bottle fed, truly being fed is best. And so follow the journey that actually really works best for you and your baby. But if you would like to continue the breastfeeding journey without experiencing pains like this, then I actually encourage you to listen onward. The first step through all this is to actually work with the lactation consultant. If you don't know what a lactation consultant is, they're actually professionals who are actively trained to help breastfeeding mothers get into the right positions and execute the proper technical latch and feeding for the little ones. So with these professionals, you can either go through the private pay route, but if you also have general commercial insurance, you might actually have some sort of lactation services covered under your policy. And so that's definitely something that you should be taking a look at if you have your own traditional insurance. And again, these are the professionals that you go through if you're dealing with stuff like nipple pain or quote unquote not producing enough milk. My wife and I, we had a couple sessions actually through our insurance, and we've already had 2, and we're total fans because I certainly learned a lot. I don't have breasts of my own, so I don't know that much about the breastfeeding mechanics, but being able to learn and say, this is the proper positioning, this is how you can allow the baby to latch on, this is how you can actually allow the baby to get most of the milk. And then the last part of that is actually what are the most ergonomic positions mothers can be in to use the least amount of energy to feed their child. The second step in the strategy is to actually use the equipment that actually works best for you and your baby. It might not actually be the piece of equipment that actually works best for your best friend, your sister, or whoever else you've come in contact when it comes to breastfeeding. You have to find what actually works best for you. So our little baby girl, as of today's episode, is 9 days old, and she actually came 2 weeks early. Although she's full term, she is a little bit on the smaller side. We'll say 6 pounds, 12 ounces. And what that means is that she is a little bit smaller than the typical full term baby, and meaning that the boppy pillow that we actually had, which is kind of like that horseshoe shaped pillow that you would wrap around the mother to hold the baby, was a little too big and had too big of a space between mother and the pillow, which resulted in our daughter actually falling in through the hole, which was something that we didn't necessarily need at the time. So it turns out that my wife was actually using more energy just trying to hold on to our daughter instead of actually focusing on feeding her. And that's where we started to notice some pretty significant aches and pains in both the neck, arms, and shoulders. We actually just recently switched over to the Breast Friend support pillow. And so we moved into it, and it turns out to be a huge game changer. And really what I love about this pillow itself is that it's adjustable, which allows you to make it tighter or looser depending on how big or how small your postpartum belly is over time. If you are interested in learning a little bit more about the Breast Friend, I'm actually going to be putting the affiliate link into the show notes. You can take a deeper look and see if this is actually more beneficial for you. The third step is actually to focus on just getting up regularly and move. It's kind of like that phrase, the whole have you turned the unit off and then back on. It's another really great opportunity for you to just have a solid reset. When you're having challenges latching, you're having challenges with having the baby latching, or your body just isn't feeling that great because you're just like, this isn't really comfortable, just pause for a moment, get up, and simply move around for a minute or so. No stretching needed during that. Just simply get up from your chair or your bed and just walk to the end of the hall and back, and then try that out again. See if that actually has a positive impact in regards to how you feel and how you can actually get your child to start feeding. The fourth step is actually going to be staying hydrated. One of the things I noticed is that my wife cannot get more hydrated. I just consistently feed her water, which is actually extremely helpful. Dehydration can lead to more fatigue on top of what you're already experiencing when dealing with the baby. And what I often tell my patients is that if you have to get up every hour or so to go pee, then you're properly hydrated. And plus, this actually helps break down the mundaneness and monotony of sitting down for long periods of time, especially when you're trying to rest. Getting up and moving is going to be particularly useful for you. And the fifth step is actually going to be what you've probably all been waiting for, like the optimal stretches. And so this is why we do these stretches, and all of the stretches that I'm going to be sharing with you, you can end up doing it for, say, 10 repetitions, or you can hold it for 20 to 30 seconds, whichever actually feels the best. You don't need to do this super crazy. It's just an opportunity to get you to move around a little bit and make yourself feel a little bit better. The first one is going to be a very, very simple, just look up towards the ceiling. When you're breastfeeding, when you have a beautiful little baby, it's actually really hard to not look at them all the time. I know for myself, I'm holding my child and I cannot stop staring at her because she is the most beautiful thing in the world. But that also means that we're looking down for hours in the day, and that can actually cause a lot of irritation to both our neck, arms, and shoulders and hands. And so every hour or so, when you remember, maybe even set yourself a reminder from a feeding schedule standpoint, look up to the ceiling and just take a nice deep breath. The second stretch is actually really helpful, and that is going to be doing just a simple chin tuck. You can actually do this by looking straight ahead and then simply tuck your chin and have your head move backwards. Think about kind of straightening out your neck. After hours of looking down, the curve in your neck actually gets a little bit more pronounced. So what that does, a chin tuck actually helps flatten out the spine and reduce the strain in your neck. It actually allows everything to get a little bit more alignment, also reduces the amount of energy it requires to hold your head up. A simple set of 10 chin tucks without actually having to hold this stretch is going to be helpful. I do understand that this stretch can actually be quite awkward for a lot of people, or maybe even a little bit more painful. So if that's the case, this next stretch might be a little bit more helpful, which the third stretch is what I like to call a downward facing dog. But instead of actually putting your hands on the floor, which is going to be a lot of work to begin with, is actually going to be placing your hands up on a wall. You're going to raise your hands so it's actually slightly higher than shoulder level. You're going to keep your hands on the wall, elbows straight, and then you're going to hinge, or you're going to push your hips back, and then you're going to press your chest down, again, keeping your chest straight. And what you're going to notice is you're going to be in that downward dog position, but just rotated 90 degrees so that you're a little bit more upright. The goal with this is that you need to keep your head above your arms as you hinge down to open up your thoracic spine or your upper back, which is the area that sits at the level of your bra strap. And you're going to do this for about 10 repetitions, or you can even just hold this position for a long period of time, again, keeping those ears above your arms. And then to make that a little bit more intense, we can go into the next progression, which is actually going to be addressing the thoracic spine a little bit more. And so instead of having your flat palms up against the wall, you can actually have your elbows up against the wall and then have your hands apart, and then you will drive your chest to the wall. So kind of like imagining like a dog that is stretching out their shoulders when they get up from a long time of sitting. And this too can be done for 10 repetitions or held for about 20 to 30 seconds, whatever feels the best. And then the last stretch that I find to be really helpful is actually the pec stretch. What ends up happening is that you're holding your baby, your elbows are flared out, everything is rounding forward, your posture is all off. So we want to be able to do the exact opposite of the motions that you're doing hour upon hour throughout the day. And so some people actually suggest a doorway pec stretch to stretch out both sides, but I'm actually a huge fan of stretching out one arm, one pec muscle at a time, and actually focusing on stretching the pec rather than tweaking the shoulder. So what that means is that you want to create a 90-degree angle at the shoulder and elbow, and then press your chest in through the doorway and not your head. A lot of people will press their head and creates a little bit more irritation. It's not going to feel that great. And you can do this for about 10 pulses with about a 1 second hold at the end range. And so these are my favorite exercises and strategies that I found to be extremely helpful to help my wife stay as healthy as she can while breastfeeding her newborn. Regardless of your journey, you don't have to live in pain when trying to feed your child, whether it be bottle or breast. And the great thing is that these stretches are actually really great for anyone who's sitting at a desk bound as well. But being that our child is only 9 days old and my wife was going through this in just less than 2 minutes a day, this was really helpful. I thought I'd share it with you. No patient-therapist relationship is formed by listening to this podcast. We are not providing medical advice, and all information should be confirmed by a medical provider.